Hello, everybody. Today I would like to walk you through a workflow where I'm going to make a number of changes to an Oracle database. Then I'm scripting this out into a state-based project where the absolute state of the database is being version controlled. Then I'm transforming this into a migration project where migration scripts are being provided, and all that I'm putting into a Git repository. I'm committing it, then I'm pushing it to a remote repository, which is then feeding a Jenkins pipeline, which runs a build process, a test, and ultimately deployed to a number of environments. And along this process, I'm going to create the rollback scripts. So after the deployment to production, I am actually enabled to put the production environment back to the initial state through a rollback workflow, which I'm going to demonstrate too. So let's get started. I have here a development environment where I'm going to make a number of changes. First, I'm going to add a column into this table here. Let's add a Twitter column to our contacts. I'm also going to create a new procedure so that I actually have a new object in here, which is a very, very simple procedure. It doesn't really matter. I will also change one of the other procedures so that there is a dedicated column which is here to be selected in the select statement. And finally, what I'm going to do is I'm adding a row in a static data table so that we see how static data, which are to be put in version control and also are part of the production environment, are progressing through this workflow. So I have here a list of country codes, and on these country codes, I'm going to add just another country. So now I have done all my developments, and we're ready for scripting them out. And what we're going to do is we're using source control for Oracle, and I'm running a comparison between the live database and the the state-based project on my file folder, and it identifies that I have done a number of changes. So I see my new objects and the modifications in the other objects, and I would like to save all those changes so they are being scripted out, and that's been done now. And the next thing, what I want to do, as I said, is using Redgate change control for making a comparison between my state-based project and my migration-based project in order to create the migration scripts which I require for the build and deployment pipeline in Jenkins. So that comparison is now complete, and we see that the modifications are being done. We see 3 out of the 4 modifications. The reason is that Redgate change control is not yet ready for handling static data. So that's I have to do in an extra step. I first generate those scripts for the modification of the schema and the procedure. And then I'm adding a manual step here where I'm executing data compare for Oracle from the command line in order to transform the static data which I have in my source control project into my migration project. And that's what's currently running. Once that has been finished, I'm going to use Redgate change control again in order to um, commit those changes to my Git repository and then ultimately push it. And I'm using this version control tab here on the top, and you see the changes which I have transformed from my state-based project to migration are all in there, so I can commit them. I'm adding a number of comments here for the Git repository. And I'm using this commit button in order to commit it to the Git repository. And at the same time, I will also through the user interface push it to the remote repository. And if I now go to my Jenkins pipeline, I'm going to start this pipeline by clicking on Run here, and that should take the migration project, which is just committed and pushed to the remote Git repository, and tries to run a build and deployment pipeline, which has already been started. So so that build is currently running. After that, we have a unit test stage where where we have created a number of tests through the UT PL/SQL framework, and those tests are being run by Redgate change automation, which is executed by this Jenkins pipeline here. As well. So we can see already that the build has been run successful. So we can actually build the entire schema of our migration projects against an empty database. That is successful. That is a first identification that this code is actually valid. The unit tests have been successfully passed, and now there are a number of steps by Redgate change automation in order to prepare the actual deployment against a number of environments. So this is currently running. Then we see that we will have a deployment against an acceptance environment, which is just another database for the time being, and then we're going to progress through to production. Before that, we're having an approval gate where we have a manual intervention in order that someone is approving the deployment through to production, and perhaps you would have a closer look at the reports and the tests, how they have been passed. What I additionally have built in here, we don't see that yet, but we are going to see in a minute, is are two additional steps where the rollback scripts are being created prior to the deployment to production, and these are two separate steps. One is for the schema, and the other one is for the data rollback. So we see that we are being asked whether we approve the deployment to production, and we will we do that in order to progress in the pipeline, and we are now running through the steps of creating the rollback scripts, which we then ultimately deploy back to the production environment. This is being done in the background by schema compare for Oracle and data compare for Oracle, which compare the source control project and the production environment. So we have now finished the pipeline. The deployment to production has successfully been accomplished. And one of the things which I want to highlight here is the production of a number of artifacts, and I would like to specifically highlight the creation of a change report, which gives us the overview of what actually has been deployed to the production database. So we can see that we actually have added a new procedure and we have modified a table and another procedure as we have expected it. And when we now go back to our Oracle database, we should see that in this production stage, we actually have the progression of our object changes. So we have the Twitter column, and we also should see that there is a new procedure here been added, and that this get contacts procedure contains a dedicated column here in the select statement. And finally, we should also see that in this country table, if we're looking at the data, we have our additional country here. Now, as I said, what we'd also want to have is now, while we have provided the rollback scripts in the process of running our Jenkins pipeline, I would quickly show you where those are. So we have actually placed them in a very dedicated manner, in a way that that Flyway can handle them in the SQL folder. So there are two scripts, one for the schema change, the other one for the data change. And if I'm now running those by a Flyway command, so this will take those two scripts and actually runs them against the production database one after the other. So it will first take back the latest change, which is the adding of the static data. And if I'm running this this command again, it will also modify back the schema changes which I have made. And if I'm now going back to my database and update it, then I should see in my production table that the Twitter column has disappeared, and also that in my countries static data table, my last entry 26 Xantia has also been taken back by the rollback scripts. Now, one of the things where Redgate Change Automation, which does the build and deployment management for this workflow, and Flyway work together, are that they are using both the table for the schema history, and that's what I wanted to also show you. So we have here in line 9 the update of the schema. That is the latest schema which I have done here on the 28th of August. And I also have a migration script for the static data, and those are being taken back by the latest process which I have run on Flyway by a rollback script versus the static data, and a rollback script versus the schema change. That is what I wanted to show you today. Thank you for listening. I'm Alexander Diab. I work for Redgate.